All right, I'm good to go. I'm
Hey,
such a Luddite.
hello everyone. This is our March. It is March, even though it's just snowed here at March.
It's March.
Lightroom
Yes.
Hangout for photo focus, and we're excited to have a special guest, Pete Collins, who I've known for many years, um, way back in the days of iStock Photo. Pete Collins is joining us from Florida.
That's right. I'm still bitter about your judgment, but we're gonna.
Exact opposite of here in New Hampshire. And Pete, photographer, illustrator, fantastic artist, educator, all around great guy, and really funny too.
Children's book author.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Speaks
working
many
on it.
languages.
Working on it. Yes.
You're still working on it.
Right. I haven't been published in my kids' book realm, but that's shortly to come.
Excellent. He's a really fun guy to follow. He shares his sketches all the time, which is really cool to see. Especially likes drawing on his kids' photographs, which is pretty cool. And of course, my co-host extraordinaire, Levi Sim. Levi, are you home?
You. I am not home. I am in Idaho. I'm in Nampa, Idaho.
Wow.
Staying over at my wife's uncle's house, heading to Utah this week.
Well, we should
take
count back. This is our third year of doing this, I think, and we should see how many times you were actually home. Trying to get you're using someplace else.
I have hit these from the road a few times, whereas Rob's Lightroom pillow and pictures and things seem to be steady every month.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's why I went with the black backdrop here, so you can't see the state of the room behind me. Because my kids, my wife will probably parade through at some point, so this is for your sake that I have the cover of cleanliness.
We appreciate your care there, Pete. So our sponsor this time, Perfectly Clear. Thanks again for sponsoring our Lightroom Hangout, and thanks again for giving us something to give away at the end of this Hangout.
That's right.
We have another one of their plugins to give away for Lightroom. And the way we do that is we ask you to send us your questions and comments via the Q&A, and let me share how to do that again.
And Dana has already weighed in. Thanks for coming
great.
back, Dana. We're glad to see you.
Hey, Dana.
All right, so here we go. So when you join our Hangout, you'll see on the actual Hangout page on Google+, click the play button and you can watch us. There's this little Q&A button up there. There is a way to add comments in the bottom here. We don't always see those because we're doing the Hangout, so we can't always see those. We try to check, but you're better off clicking that Q&A, and once you're in the Hangout, you'll see that little icon up at the top. Click on that and get to the Q&A. Then this will pop up on the side. Click Ask a New Question, and you can send your question in to us, and we keep our eye on those throughout the Hangout. And I'm sending you to oblivion. There we go. And that's where we pick our winners. So right now, the odds of Dana winning are really, really good.
That's right.
The only one who said a comment in so far. And we'll pause around halfway through and remind everyone to do that again, and we'll give you a kind of a 5-minute warning towards the end. So our topic this month is...
Hey, real quick, sorry.
Yeah.
I can't leave questions in there, can I?
You cannot.
Because that then makes me ineligible. Thanks a lot. I was going with my 50-50 shot of beating Dana out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. We'll see what we can do for you, Pete. So our topic this month is pretty wide open. Practice makes perfect. And so we each kind of, thought about this and interpreted it in our own way. So we're going to share a lot of different things that kind of cover a wide gamut of things you can do in Lightroom and before you get to Lightroom as well. And maybe even after. I don't know. So any questions you have, start firing those away. Pete, before we get going, anything you want to tell us about what's going on for you, where we can find you, how people can learn more about you?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing is you can track me down over at petecollins.com. I should write that on the screen. petecollins.com, or you can track me down on Facebook, and it's I'm at Pete C Photo. So my first name, last initial, photo is the way you can track me down. Easiest thing, petecollins.com. You can sign up for my newsletter.
That's right.
And track me down.
Well,
I enjoy his Instagram too.
Yeah, I'll put all those links on the page, on the Hangout page too, so they'll be part of this conversation. So if you didn't get that, we'll post that for you. So, all right. So who'd like to go first with our practice makes perfect tips?
Well, let's have Pete shoot us off. Share away here.
Losers, you
Shoot
want
off
me
at
to
the
go
mouth
first?
potentially
Well,
here
you
too.
Well, here I've got my sheet of scribblings that I did madly, months ago, wink, wink, to get ready for this. And basically, we've got a couple different avenues that you could look at here. You could look at stuff that you're going to do. You've already taken the pictures. How are you going to improve your workflow there? But then also how you can use your Lightroom, once you've taken the pictures, how you can use that to inform for when you go out and take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've really got this whole idea of practice makes perfect. We as photographers tend to be a little lazy, at least I know I am. And so what we'll do is we'll meet a friend and they'll go, yeah, would you shoot our wedding? And you're like, sure, no problem. And I can do a wedding album and all this stuff for you. But you haven't done a wedding album in 2 years. And so you go shoot the wedding, you got to go through all those things, and you probably don't have a real good workflow for culling through all the images. So that wedding ends up taking 40 hours just to edit because of all the stuff you've got going on there. Then you start to make the album. You haven't done that in forever, and you run into snags there. So here you've promised this friend you're going to shoot the wedding for $1,000 or whatever, and it's taken you 60 hours just to get the wedding done. When you start to break down the price, it's not worth it. And suddenly there was joy, yeah, I can shoot my friend's wedding, it becomes a burden. And a lot of that comes down to we wait till we have the pressure and the chaos of actually having to perform to really kind of put the screws to what do we know, how well do we do it. And so one of my big things that I like to say is spend some time on personal projects, fun projects, learn how you can speed up your workflow and enjoy it and have a system down so that you can be more effective, more efficient, because that's going to lead to more creativity. Creativity does not survive well in fear and timelines and stress and chaos. Yeah, there's desperation, and sometimes you pull amazing things out of your hat. There's desperation, and we've all been there. As a matter of fact, most of us live there because that's when we actually get serious about things. That's Holy crap, I've got an hour. Let me see how fast I can process these things. When the truth of the matter is true creativity, which we all want to be more creative, and because that feeds back into our hearts, whereas desperation just gets us out of trouble. True creativity and growth feeds into our soul so that we feel like this is worth it. Because how many projects, how many times have you shot something and at the end of it you going, man, this wasn't worth it?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the reason is because you haven't practiced to the point where there's joy and creativity in it. It's just trying to get things done. And so even before you jump into the whole Lightroom processing, I like to say go out and shoot something, even if it's something boring, shoot it multiple times and then process it so that you can feed into the knowledge of what it takes to shoot that. So I go back oftentimes in my Lightroom catalogs. There's always those catalogs in there that you like to overlook. You're like, yeah, I know they're there, but I never want to visit them again. Those are actually probably some of the best files to go practice on because, let's face it, we learn more from our mistakes than our lucky knocks out of the park. It's like, why does this file haunt me? And you start looking at those pictures and you go, I wish I'd done this, or look how I processed that. And so it's like really practicing to become better, because we can either be photographers that happen upon pictures, or we can be craftsmen who are able to craft pictures according to our vision. The only difference is the knowledge of tools and the experience to be able to get where you want to go. And most of us are hoping we get there instead of going, I know I can get there because I know my craft well enough. And the only way you can get to become a good craftsman is to practice your craft. And so that's my little spiel, quick spiel.
Cool.
Thanks, Pete. I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, Anthony Falsarella has a question related, I think. He's asking how, for some tips on getting used to using a tablet with your photography workflow. A lot of us who haven't been designers or didn't start using a tablet until more recently, it's hard to get used to. Do you have any ideas for that?
Yeah, a couple things. Well, first of all, I've got a Cintiq right here. I can't live without a tablet at least, but if I can play with my Cintiq, that's...
And a Cintiq is you're touching the screen, you're drawing on the screen.
Right, so if I take this and swing it around, this will probably mess up things. See, there it is right there, so I can draw right on the screen, whatever's going on. And what that does for me is it allows me to be a lot more precise. I used to talk to Moose Peterson about using a tablet and Wacom products or whatever, and he says you're buying time and efficiency, and I agree. The Cintiq's a lot easier in some ways, learning-wise, because you're right on the screen. You just go in there and hit right on the screen. A tablet takes a little bit more of a learning curve, but what you're going to get is you're going to get more sensitivity, pressure sensitivity, but also being able to get in those little small places. You've just got it's a sharper tool in your toolbox.
Yeah.
But just like anything else, it's like when I used to teach tennis, and you would get people that had their old racket that they'd been playing with for 5 or 10 years, and they loved it. They knew everything about it. It was comfortable to them. The problem was that it was old technology. The strings were bad. They had gotten used to playing with an inferior product, and so it felt weird when we tried to move them up to a better tennis racket because they had gotten used to the feel. Well, a tablet's the same way. It's an upgrade in technology. It's going to speed your process along, but it takes a little getting used to. One of the first things I tell people when they're trying to make that transition, turn the touch features off immediately.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And maybe even lower the sensitivity a little bit, because when you're first starting out, you're kind of all over the place. And so take off a couple, only work on one aspect of the tablet, and that may be, instead of the pressure sensitivity and all that, just have it be a simple stylus first. Then you can add in the pressure sensitivity, where, if you're pressing down harder, it gets bigger. You're going softer, it gets smaller. That's really going to help you once you've gotten used to just moving the pen around. But if you try to do both at the same time and then add the touch sensitivity to it, that thing's jumping all over the place. You'll hate it. You'll never use it. Because you've got to get the reward back for the effort. If it takes too long to get the reward of this helps out, you won't use it. But if you can get some early victories, it'll make a big difference. And so that would be my first suggestion.
Cool.
Hope that makes sense.
That does. That makes sense.
Also, a lot of people ask, should I get a small tablet, medium tablet, large tablet? I would say always think about your workflow, what you're going to be doing, but also how you work. I came from an art background, so I tend to be a little bit more expressive with my hands. So a medium one's pretty good for me, but most people like the small because they're used to being in a little bit tighter. If you're more of a wrist drawer versus an arm drawer?
Drawer?
Can you tell I'm from the South? Yeah, drawer. That may make a difference, but most of the time you can get away, and good news is they're cheaper, get away with the small tablet because it's extra portable. It's going to be great for you, and it's the cheaper of the line.
Yeah, I have the medium size, and the medium it's a little bit smaller than my 15-inch laptop, and I think we're getting that echo again, Pete.
Why blame me? Blaming me.
I don't know.
I'm blaming Pete.
Julie's the guy without the earbuds. But right. What's nice about what Peter's saying is absolutely true. I like the medium. It's kind of the compromise between the two, and it fits right in my bag with my laptop. And it has the wireless option, so you don't even have to have the wires out there. It's really nice, very portable. But it does take practice to get perfect. It's something that they used to say, put your mouse in the drawer for a couple days and just use the tablet exclusively.
Right.
Lightroom, when it comes to pressure sensitivity, people do ask about this. It supposedly has some, You have to be Wes Maggio, I think, to see it.
Right.
It's not like it in Photoshop, but hopefully that will improve. But just when it comes to doing things with, especially with the adjustment brush, you just can't beat the precision of having the tablet. So, but definitely takes some practice to do. Were you gonna say something else, Pete?
Well, if he does, he has to unmute himself first because I muted him. Click on that little mic by your.
Okay, how about now? Now I'm cool. I've got earbuds in.
Yeah.
Now I think we just
we just don't get the feedback. So I wanted to show a little thing in Lightroom along this line of practicing, and maybe it will touch on Glenn's. Maybe we can touch on Glenn Hewitt's question about how do you know when you over-edited an image.
Yeah.
And that's, I know where you're going. You're probably going to talk about virtual copies and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way. And then I'd say once he gets through with that, think about stepping away from your image for a day or two. Because one of the problems that we do is we think about these things in light of time invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they become more important to us the more time we've put into them. So if you can walk away for a day or two and then revisit it, you'll usually come back with fresh eyes. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead, Rob.
No, you're absolutely right. So a couple of tools inside of Lightroom I think are helpful for when it comes to practicing and hopefully even just in your normal workflow. One of those is the history panel. So every time you move a slider inside of the history, inside of Lightroom,
and you're in Develop,
that gets recorded as a step inside the history panel. And at any point, you can click on one of those steps and see what Lightroom looked like at that state and time, and that could be really helpful. One of the times that's helpful is if you're in before and after view, all right? And so by default, the before view is usually the import view, all right? And that may not be too helpful if you've kind of moved on in your work and you're maybe want to see comparatively to a somewhat in-between state, not dead import, but something along the line. So say we wanted to look at maybe before I started doing cropping and things like that, I can come down to maybe this state here, and I can just drag that state right onto the before, and now that becomes my before state when I'm doing my before and after comparison. Right? You can also right-click or control-click on one of these and copy the history step before. Same thing as when I did the drag and drop. And the other thing you can do is create a snapshot. And so what I like to do, especially if I'm trying to pay attention to my processing, is create snapshots as I go. All right. And so when I finished the kind of the basic adjustments, all right, I made a snapshot at the basic step. When I did my tone curve, I did that. One for lens correction, made some HSL adjustments, and then I did some additional adjustments and kind of came up with the final step. What's cool about snapshots too is you can also set a snapshot as the before state. So if I kind of come back to my before, the drag and drop part doesn't work. At least it hadn't been working. I don't know if they've added that in yet. But you can right click on a snapshot and also have that set to your before setting. So if you want to do a comparison before and after to one of your previous states and snapshots. All right.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I try to, when I think of it, number my snapshots in the order that I created them, if I'm using them in like a workflow state, because sometimes otherwise they sort alphanumerically, and that may not be helpful. Yeah. So if I can gratuitously show my puppy from this morning in the snow, I did some snapshots while I was doing that, and if I wanted to go back later and maybe name them correctly, I can right-click and choose rename, and then maybe whatever step that was, I can number it. So this was probably my first step here. Rename that, and by putting a number in front, that just sorts it right to the top of the snapshot panel. All right.
Well, so and that's so handy because oftentimes we get all of our pictures to a certain base level, and we're like, yeah, this is done pretty well. But then you want to compare that base level to where you make those extra sauce special attempts to it, and your normal comparing takes you all the way back to the bland, raw, or whatever. Right. And so that's really good to show the before and after. What I love about the history panel in Lightroom is that it's forever.
Yeah.
So, you go back
It's not
to a
limited.
picture that you did 3 years ago, and you can go immediately back to the history state of wherever in there. It logs every move you made for that picture.
Yeah,
And so
I wish
it's
it did. I wish it had a date stamp for all of them. It does the date stamp for exporting, but even some of the other ones, it might be nice to know when you actually got around to doing the processing.
Right, but that would just make me cry.
I guess that's true. The cool thing about snapshots also is if you're one of the kind of folks who likes to have Lightroom write to your own photos metadata as well as to the catalog, snapshots is actually information that can be stored with the photos metadata. All these individual history steps cannot. So
what does that mean?
Well, so if you are someone who likes to have the automatically write to XMP, which is
oh, yes.
it's on this.
Which I am. I am one of those guys.
If you like to have this checked here, this is under catalog settings metadata, right? All of these history steps are not written. Okay, the last steps are whatever your final adjustments. Obviously, those are included, but not every single step along the way, and that's fine. Maybe you don't really need that, right? But snapshots can be included in that, right? And so that's kind of cool. So if I also take it to what Pete was saying earlier, if I create a virtual copy, because maybe I want to try this as a black and white, all right? So I click on black and white, and I want to now start processing this as a black and white. Well, if we look in the history panel, all my other steps are not in there, and that's fine. I don't need them. It just starts with where I created the virtual copy, and then I started to do some additional adjustments. But my snapshots from the master actually come over with the virtual copy, so they're accessible that way. So that's pretty cool too. All right. So snapshots are nice. And now if I say maybe I like this was the final black and white. Not saying it is, but let's say I wanted it to be. I can now create a snapshot and call this my black and white. Right? And now if I go back to the original, there's my black and white.
Oh, really? Cool.
It's accessible there too. So that way in the source file, all right, if I was writing to XMP, I'd actually have access to both of those states of the image. So it gives you lots of opportunity to practice because you can always go back to any other previous step, and gives you lots of ways to kind of track your progress as you move along. So.
Rob, you're my Lightroom hero. I'm just going to say that.
Yes.
By the way, I need to say hey to Miroslav in Panama. Glad you could join us, buddy.
Oh, good. He found it. Good. I did a little. I was typing before while Pete was talking because he was having trouble finding how to do the Q&A. So hopefully, I don't know if I helped or not, but I'll take the credit for it. And
Chad asked what pen you were using. I'm assuming that may be you, or it could be me. I put it up on tried to put it on my camera. I'm using a Wacom Cintiq, so I'm drawing right on the screen. Rob, you held up a Intuos Pro?
Yeah, the medium.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that.
I've got the same.
Yeah.
I think I've got a large.
Well.
Yeah. Pete, you don't have the 36-inch Cintiq?
I had the 24 HD for a while. This one's a measly 22 HD.
Yeah,
so
that's still pretty nice. That's pretty sweet.
You know,
it's amazing.
Panasonic makes this 20-inch handheld tablet. It's a 4K screen, and it's drop proof and things. You can drop it from 6 feet. It's only $5,000. For that tool alone.
Levi's buying a car right now, so he won't be getting that.
Yes.
So hopefully, as far as when it comes to how do you know when you're done, I don't know. That's a good question. You know, I guess when you turn it into the client, I guess you're done in that state. But you probably, in your own mind, probably feel like there's more you can do, right?
Well, I'd also say here's the thing that a lot of times we forget to ask ourselves and other photographers: what are you trying to say? I did a class on composition with my buddy Steve Gustafson, and he would teach photo students all the time, and he would go, well, what are you trying to say? Because at the end of the day, our photographs are supposed to communicate something.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say you've got a picture of a Civil War reenactor, you know, so you're editing should be influenced by what you're trying to communicate in this picture. Something made you take that picture. So how can you help embellish that to clarify the message of what you're trying to say? Does that make sense? So for instance, I've got this Civil War soldier, and so I may really blur out the background and beat up the picture somewhat, add grain and all this stuff to help it feel like it's an old photograph with an old subject, whereas that wouldn't work at all for an architectural picture. So a lot of times when you're asking, have I over-edited it, you need to ask yourself, what am I trying to say, and what is this processing really saying? Because a lot of times we process the same way over and over again because we like it. I know I'm going to move this slider, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And a lot of times we forget to take into consideration what is it we're actually trying to accomplish with this image. And so that can help somewhat. And then usually if you've studied yourself, you know that you tend to be a little heavy-handed or tend to be a little light-handed. Most of us, when we start playing around with editing, get too heavy-handed. Whatever we like, drop it back 25%.
Right. Yeah. That's there you go.
Because invariably it looks great while I'm at the screen working on it. Yeah, that's it. And I then go, I'm going to put that up on Facebook. And as soon as it goes up on Facebook, you're like, no, that was too much. So a lot of times, if you can realize where you get too heavy-handed, back it off a little bit, you'll end up liking the picture a little bit better.
Yeah, when I show it to my wife and she says, why does it look like a cartoon? Then I know I've gone a little too strong.
Is your wife as gentle and encouraging as my wife is when it comes to pictures?
Probably.
I'm detecting a sarcastic note there.
Yeah.
All right. So there's another question here that Cecil is asking, and hopefully Cecil, you're able to watch us better now. He was having a problem earlier. So with these Hangouts, there's like nothing we can do if you're having trouble because it's not like we're in the control room at Google dialing buttons and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of all or nothing. So hopefully you're in there. So he's asking about adding text in the print module. So let me share my screen again. And
while Rob talks about adding print, I'm going to be taking a sip of a nice cold beverage.
All right. Do you see my Lightroom now?
We do.
So when it comes to adding text in the print module, there's three ways I can think of that you can do it. And let me just switch this image over. So this template is one I use to print out note cards. I have this paper from UCO. It's a really nice paper. It's a folded card, so this would be the front, and then this is the back. And then up on the back, I have my name there, and it's just usually stuff I just send to people as little note cards. So it's kind of nice. My wife is really my primary client for these. So when it comes to adding text, what I'm using in this case is just an identity plate. All right, and so I just have some very simple text in there. This is not a graphic. If I come over here, I can edit it, and I just have my last name set to one color. The rest is a different color. I could choose the font, and you can customize this, to a certain extent. It's not as robust as, say, doing this in Photoshop or doing this in, InDesign or something that was really a layout program. Lightroom is not. All right, so you're really kind of limited into what it can do, but sometimes maybe it's just enough. All right. And then,
well, if you want to take that extra step, you could, with that identity plate, import a graphic. So you could go into something like Photoshop and save a graphic with that text, do your text in an area that handles it better, and then bring it over. It's a little workaround, but yeah, that can happen.
Yeah, if you save it as a PNG, it'll have the transparency too, and that's a great point. And then I just rotated it so it's upside down here, but when the card's folded, it will be right side up. So it's kind of nice. You can do a little bit of rotating if needed, or turn that off if you don't. So that's one way to do it. When you're in this single image contact sheet, you also have the option to, on the page here, add a little bit of text in this photo info here, where you can, this little text appeared for file name. That's because this image on my white background is just a blank white image, but it has a name. And then you can see the file name is below here. Well, that's this option here. And you can add in a certain amount of text, but you really can't do too much in terms of formatting. So this is really more for when you're doing a contact sheet, perhaps, and you want to show the file names for each one, or maybe there's some other little bit of text you want to add in there. I don't know, the date or your equipment. I don't know if you ever want to do one of those things. But if you click on Edit, it will open up this text template editor, and you can actually, cobble together a template based on whatever metadata or things you want to try and display there. If that was important to you, you can try and add that in there, right? But you don't have much in terms of formatting, so we can change the font size, and that's about it. We can't change, I think, anything else about it. We can't choose the font or anything like that. So, and that doesn't appear on the other layout styles. I don't believe it's part of picture package or custom package either. So you don't have that option. You do have the identity plate, but you don't have that other option. And then the other one is doing a watermark. All right, and so similar to the identity plate, you can do either a text-based watermark, or you can do, as Pete suggested, bring in a graphic, and that might give you another option for adding text. So,
however, I think that falls on the photograph itself when you do a watermark. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that right? And it'll fall on every photograph in there.
Yeah.
Well, now,
and so there it is in the corner.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking, and it's always dangerous when I run an Audible and mention something that I haven't thought all the way through. But Rob, maybe you could say this. You can do like the magazine layout overlay.
Oh, well, it's a view, but it won't display on the print.
It won't display. Oh,
yeah.
Never mind. That's forget what I said. I don't know what I'm talking about.
What Pete was saying was it under the view menu? Boy, it's so rare that I ever use that.
Yeah, it was a quirky. I was just thinking, because you've got a chance to mock up a magazine cover look or whatever that you usually have to do in Photoshop, but kind of a similar thing that you could then overlay. I was just thinking maybe that'd give another option, but no, I'm retarded. Don't listen to me.
Yeah, so if you're curious what Pete's talking about, I've used this on book covers. And so if you have a graphic, usually like a PNG graphic that has whatever the bare structure is for your layout, perhaps there's a piece of text that's always in one place, or a byline, or whatever the elements are that are fixed, and you want to lay that over your photograph, so you can see if it's a good fit on that layout. You can choose that layout image, and it will appear inside of Lightroom overlaid on your photo. I don't have one ready, or I'd show it to you, but we can maybe put that on another day. But it could be really useful if especially if you're shooting tethered. Maybe you're doing a product placement and you want to see how it's going to look. I don't know. Different ways you can use it, and I do it for when I do my book cover. So, for example, let me.
I shoot for a magazine every month, and if I use that to show them how this image would look on the cover.
Here's a cover where. On this, book, this piece is static on all of these books, so I can just have a graphic of this that has this, and wherever my name appears down here, and then just try it on different images to see how it looks. Crop to that right aspect ratio and see how it looks. So, but it doesn't display on the outside. So hopefully, Cecil, that answered your question.
Well, I was also going to say real quick on that. Another great value-added option with that is if you've got kids, photographers, or whatever, sports teams. You can show them the picture package, like if Rob was saying shooting tethered, you can show them kind of what that picture package is going to look like right there on the field. It's one of those things. It's a little esoteric, but you can kind of take that and spin it to add a little extra value.
Actually, that's a good point, Pete. So if you have a print layout that has maybe a football in the corner or whatever the thing is, in the print module, where we're using the identity plate to kind of build on Pete's example even further, if you did add a graphic, you can actually have a graphic that is a border, and you can display a border around your entire image as well. I don't have one of those ready, but that was kind of a little bit of a trend for a while. People were like printing their photos with like a rough edge that they made in Photoshop or something like that, or maybe it had a film edge or something like that. But you can use a graphical identity plate in that same way to create that kind of overlay and put over the entire image. And if you use it in the print module using Identity Plate, it will print, unlike the view one that just shows the overlay there. So I can't think of any other way to put text on there. So hopefully that helps you, Cecil. All right. Another question here?
That's cool. Well, and before we do that, Rob, will you show us one more time how to find the Q&A in the Hangout so that a few more people can weigh in with questions, thus qualifying themselves for our drawing for a complimentary license of Perfectly Clear, which I use to make my pictures better, and it does it faster and better than I can do it on my own in Lightroom and Photoshop. And I'm pretty good at Lightroom, so I appreciate how well Perfectly Clear works for making my pictures look better.
All right, are you seeing my screen there?
I see your screen.
On the Google Plus Hangout page, you can start the Hangout, and there's a little Q&A button that tells you we're taking those questions. Levon's always on here in my screen capture permanently. If you do put questions here, we may or may not see them because we're yammering over here, so we don't always look. But I do try to look. But once you're in the Hangout, you will see this little icon up in the top. Click on that. That will open up the Q&A. Click on that. It opens up this side panel where you can ask a new question. And then we see those inside the Hangout. And then we try to answer them as best as we are able. But even if we can't answer them, it enters you in the drawing for the prize at the end there. So
that's right. So saying something like Rob is my Lightroom hero too, that qualifies you for the drawing. You don't actually have to ask a question, but you do have to make a comment or something. Yeah. There we go.
This is my little sister.
It seems to be working for you. Stephen Van Herpen just said Q&A is not working, but we see
if we can read it.
We can read it. You're in.
Yeah, there you go. Anthony's asking about Lightroom Mobile. Do you use Lightroom Mobile to do any field editing, and are there any challenges that you see? I do use Lightroom Mobile. Do you guys use it at all?
I use it daily. Yeah.
I try to avoid it.
You try to avoid it? Yeah. I use it more for fun, I have to say. Family pictures, that kind of thing, or when I'm traveling, that kind of thing, or as a way to have access to my photos that I'd like to show people.
That's the way I use it mainly.
Not so much field editing, come home and it's done type of deal.
However,
it's just like everything else. Sorry, I'm talking over you, Levi. It's just like everything else. You've got to figure out what's the best thing for you in your workflow. For instance, if I'm going out and shooting, I'm immediately coming back and sitting down at my computer. I haven't had the need for the Lightroom Mobile because it isn't that immediate turnaround. It isn't that I've got to do this stuff, or I'm not sitting on a plane for a long time. Being able to have access to that, really good. It's such a wonderful tool, but it comes down to do you really need it in your workflow, or is it just something nice to have? And for me, at this point, it's just nice to have. But the one thing I will say is whenever you're working not only in mobile, but even at your desktop at home, is to know what kind of lighting situation you have around you can influence your developing. Because if you got a lot of light around you, you can tend to make it too bright, or vice versa. So there are a couple little, logistical things as far as working out on the field. Yeah, I think it's a great tool to have, especially if that's what you need to do to have a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Well, that actually fits right in with Vaughn's question there too, Pete, about screen color differences and brightness, so that you can have consistency in your processing. And like you say, if you're using a different screen in a different place all the time, you're inherently creating an inconsistent workflow. But lastly, I use Lightroom Mobile frequently because I can transmit from my camera to my iPad and show my client on site an idea of what I'll be doing, and so I may edit that way. But mostly I'm just doing it, like Rob said, for access to images. It's the fastest way to get pictures from Lightroom into Instagram. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's
no, no.
I was going to say. Yeah, the whole idea of and you holding up your camera with your spider holster nub on the bottom of it really bothers me because I had my Fuji stolen at Busch Gardens 2 weeks ago,
I'm
and it's
sorry.
still got the little nub right on the bottom. So if anybody
yeah.
comes across a Fuji and it's got that little nub on it, it's mine.
Did they take it out of the holster while you were?
But no, I was using the wireless to send it over to Instagram, and I don't know if I hooked it up right or just set it on the bench. It was my backup camera, my throwaway camera, because I had my big lens on my Canon, and I got up and walked away, and somebody took it.
Bummer.
Oh man.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
Part of what I think Vaughn is asking, though, too, is around screen color when you're doing your processing. So in your color managed workflow, so that, you know, like here I am in the daylight, and my room's kind of bright. Obviously, at nighttime, it's kind of dark. What do people do? Well, you know, I think if you're people I know who are really super serious about that, they work in a room where it's totally light controlled. You know, where maybe there's not windows, or the windows windows can be totally darkened, and then they have their lighting environment in the room.
And they paint the walls gray.
Yeah, and they paint their walls 50% gray, and then on their workstation they actually have a box that has a lighting environment for when they hang their prints that matches where their prints are, so they can look at the print in this little light box next to their screen to see to gauge that consistency. I don't do that. I don't. I haven't had any problem or issue with images in terms of that being a problem that I've had to take it to that level. So
well, and it depends on your output too. It's like
exactly
certain people that have to get the color exactly right,
That's right.
Whereas most of us don't. It is good to get it as close as you can, but sometimes the workflow that you add to do all that can become a hindrance versus I'm actually enjoying doing all this stuff.
Yeah. So I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's great if you're able to do that. I just haven't done that. I haven't gone up against that.
Until you create a print that you can hold, it doesn't matter because my screen looks different than your screen, and most people are viewing our pictures right here anyway.
Right. Yeah, there's such a variety, and yeah, so much of this stuff doesn't actually get put into ink and paper anymore. That, and it's really impossible to control for color across different screens.
Well, so that's once again you need to learn and figure out what your proclivities, how you tend to do things, so that you can adjust for the different situations. For instance, I like to play frisbee golf, disc golf, and I know my tendency is to pull a little bit left, so that when I need to make a straight shot, I've got to adjust this way. Well, if you know enough about your setup, you know, during the day you're going to have a brighter situation, and at night you're going to have a darker situation. You can set it up so that you can take that into account when you're processing. Right. Just that you know, okay, I need to tone this down just a little bit because I'm being influenced by the stuff around me. Yeah. You know, I'm low tech in everything that I do. I just go, okay, how do I tend to screw this up? Let's try to avoid that. Yeah.
All right. Hopefully, Yvonne, that somewhat answered your question, or at least gave you our opinions on it. I applaud anyone who takes it to that degree, especially if you don't have to.
Just make it all black and white.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Chad is asking, so will the pen work as a mouse, only better on an iPad?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out.
Okay, so Chad, you're thinking of the pens, the stylus that work with an iPad, but Pete is actually using a monitor that is a computer, and his pen interfaces with his monitor directly.
It's a product by Wacom that
right.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then the other tablet we're talking about. So, and this is a problem because Wacom has called these things tablets forever, which is the pad that you held up, Rob. Hold up your tablet again. It's not an iPad tablet. It's not a Surface Pro. It's like a mouse pad, and the pen interfaces with this pad and then coordinates with the screen. So just a little bit different.
Now we have these kind of tablets.
Right.
That,
that's another tool entirely.
You can use a stylus on, and now that's the iPad Pro, so you can actually have the pen, which is like a Bluetooth connection to the iPad. So it interfaces that way.
Brian Hughes was showcasing with the iPad Pro and the new pencil or whatever with Adobe.
Yeah.
That it really read pressure there as well. And then Miroslav's talking about the Surface Pro. I got to play with it back at Adobe Max, and it's a whole nother interface that you can use a pen to read pressure and stuff like that. They are very handy for helping doing post-processing and editing because you've got a lot more sensitivity and control. It just comes down to figuring out what's the best platform for you to play around with.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot more people looking at the Surface Pro. I think they're definitely coming along, and I think we're definitely going to see a lot more touch-enabled tablets, computer. I think it's all going to merge into one. It's all kind of coming together because people like that. Although even now I sit here, I've got a Mac laptop next to an iPad, and so I'm touching on one, and I have to remember to use the keyboard on the other, so I don't get fingerprints on my laptop screen. Yeah, so once they all come together.
Right, my daughter walks up and starts poking on my computer.
Yeah. What are the little corners on the Wacom Surface? I think that just kind of shows you where you can have the area set to. If that's what he means, these little...
Yeah, it kind of helps denote the live area, to help you track it a little bit more. And then you've got your buttons on the side and your little rocker dial in the middle that you can program for different functions. A lot of shortcuts that you can put onto those.
Yeah, as well as in the pen itself. So it's, this somewhat turning into a commercial for Wacom, but I think we all love them, and it's really a great product and a great company too. So yeah, Levi's my hero too, definitely.
And yes, we're having.
He's just kind of okay for me. He hasn't reached hero status yet.
Miroslav's asking if Perfectly Clear is for Windows. Yes, it is also for Windows, Windows and Mac. Yeah.
And their engineers, Perfectly Clear, are awesome. I mean, these guys live and breathe clarity, and it's they're some neat guys.
Yeah, and actually, we had one of those guys on our Hangout last month.
Yeah, Jeff Stevens joined us last month. It was.
Yeah, and so all of our past PhotoFocus Lightroom Hangouts are all available on photofocus.com. They're all on YouTube, I guess. Obviously.
In fact, I'm working on a new catalog of them that will be easier to access on PhotoFocus as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So there's this. I think this is our third year. Didn't we start in like January?
Yeah, I think. So,
yeah.
So or was it? I think it was actually October the year before. Yeah. So we're like
long time.
3 and some in.
There's a lot of them going back, covering all kinds of topics, all kinds of wonderful guests, and this one, now Pete has been added to the pantheon of Lightroom Hangouts.
Well, let me jump in here. Mark Freeman said he appreciated the tips on how to get started with the Wacom. You definitely, if you can break through, it'll become where you hate to work without it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's a sign of good technology. As soon as you get it, you go, man, I never want to not have this.
Yeah.
And that's where you can get with these tablets. But it takes a little getting over the hump of this feels a little bit weird. But once you get it, it's like you never want to go back to pushing a mouse around. Now, right. Chad asked if there's a specific model that we all have. Probably have a couple of them, depending on, we've been doing this for a while and tend to have one that's your go-to travel one, and then one maybe you work it that stays at your desktop or whatever. Any of the products by Wacom are amazing. And it really comes down to what's going to be the best one to suit your needs. Even from the entry level to the big daddies, the Cintiq that I'm working on here, the big screen, any of those are going to make you a little bit better. That's my theory. So yeah, just shop around and figure out what's going to be good for you.
All right, well, we've got about 10 minutes or so left in our Hangout, so if you have any questions or comments, if Pete's your hero,
I've got some tips.
Yeah, Levi, why don't you show us some tips, Levi? Because I've been hogging all the screen time. So.
Well, so I think, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
If by your screen you mean your face.
Yeah. If your screen is your face, we see. There we go.
There you go.
How about now? There we go.
Now.
Oh, look at
let
that
me show
blatant
you.
Brad Moore
Oh, there's some Brad.
pimpage.
There's some Brad. Yes. Oh.
Hi there, I'm Brad Moore. You're not.
What I wanted to show you was how I'm using. I thought I was going to show you.
Brad Moore.
It was. It's way before Brad Moore, but. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I wanted to show you how knowing what my tools can do is shaping the way I'm shooting. For instance, this picture, I'm pointed up at this this temple in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's the Mormon temple there, and so I've got these perspective. My perspective has changed. You see that the lines on this side of the temple are sloping towards the center, and then the lines on this side are also sloping upward towards the center, and that's because I've tilted the camera. Well, Lightroom has this cool tool. I'm in the Develop module, and I'm in the Lens Corrections tab. And if I just press Auto, it straightens up those lines significantly and makes it a lot more vertical. And so the way that this is affecting me is that I am now changing the way I shoot to shoot just a little bit wider so that I have more room for this correction to happen. And then I'm going to end up with a more, well, it's honestly a more professional looking photograph. We used to do this with a view camera, with a medium or large format camera, or a tilt shift lens that allows us to actually change the perspective that the camera is shooting at. And this is allowing me to approach that kind of quality if I can just remember that I can do it, and then I can shoot for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one way I'm using it. And then, of course, Rob knows this is coming. I am practicing using the tools I've got in Lightroom, the adjustment tools, like the radial filter brush, the radial gradient brush. Things like this allow me to change the way my picture looks without changing, selectively change the way my picture looks. And so practicing with these tools allows me to shoot differently, knowing that after I shoot, I'm going to do this, and that's in the back corner of my brain as I'm shooting, which is a small corner. But it's really helping me be a better photographer.
That's a great point. Knowing what the capabilities are after the fact can help you be a little freer, help decide what kind of gear you're going to take out there. Yeah, a lot of times you're sitting there going, should I bring all these lenses? I want the shallow depth of field, I want the tilt shift and all that.
Right.
And all of a sudden you go, I can still get to where I want to go afterwards, so I'm going to let some of this go so I can go be a little freer. Because one of the problems with gear is we become slaves to gear.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to go, okay, should I be shooting with the 85 1.4? Should I be with the 50 1.2? I don't know. Well, if you know that in some ways you can make up for some of that in post, not always advocating, you just, I'll fix it in post, but think about, all right, I don't have to be as precise right now because I know I can capture that. It's more important for me to be in the moment, capture the emotion, capture the situation and what made me want to take that picture more than I wish I had a different lens or I did this, that, or the other. It's really coming to know how you can craft what you're doing to get where you want to go.
Yeah, like for instance, I might not bring my ultra-wide lens as much anymore because Lightroom stitches panoramas. And so I can shoot my whole scene with my 50 and put it together in Lightroom, and actually I kind of prefer that perspective on the world better.
Because that's how you emotionally respond to it. First of all, that 50, it's your friend, so you've already got the emotional reward of I'm using the lens I like, but then you also are doing it, using it more and more, so it's becoming an even sharper tool for you.
Yeah. Can I share my screen one last time?
Yes, please.
I'm going to have to share my screen at some point just to be part of the cool kids. You go ahead.
All right. So on that,
he just wanted to show us his puppy again.
I want to show my puppy again. So that's Monty. That's not what I wanted to show you though. All right. So this is about 23 different photos taken with a 105 millimeter lens And it was just because we were walking around just looking at locations, and I had it. We walked through this little spot, and there was Half Dome. And so I just handheld shot about, I don't know, 20 to 30 frames, overlaying them as best as I could while hand-holding it, and then put them all into Lightroom. It stitched them all together into this one pano.
Right.
And it ended up being a huge file. And what's cool, if I zoom in, I got this amazing amount of detail that I would not have if I shot this with a wide-angle lens to get that same amount of the scene in there. So,
and if you had shot it with a wide-angle lens, Half Dome would be smaller and the trees would be apparently larger, and you'd have the branches overhanging next to you too that are.
Yeah, it was, and it was all because I knew I could do that inside of Lightroom later on. That I could just somewhat wing it and just fire away. And pull it off. So it's pretty nice. All right, Pete, go ahead, share your screen if you need to.
All right. Yep. Somebody said, do you tend to use, Anthony asked, do you tend to use your lens correction tool on a frequent basis or as needed, just as you displayed? The answer is yes. It actually segues into my my little deal here. Let's go here. All right, and so I'm going to jump over to Lightroom. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes, sir.
You all disappeared. One of the best things that from day one, once I found this out, made my life infinitely better, and it's all about import presets. And so what it is if you're going to come in and you're going to import anything, select a source. It doesn't really matter. Whatever I click on, it's going to be missing files, I'm sure, because I'm such a good organizer. But come over here. Whenever I'm going to import anything, I apply an import preset. And if you don't do this, you're really kind of adding extra work into your workflow, because what you can do with your import preset. Let's cancel this out. We go over into our develop module, and you've got all these different presets that you figured out, but whatever things that you find you're doing over and over again, create a preset that at least gets you 85–90% of the way there, so that, for instance, everything's flat raw when it comes in, but when we saw it on the back of the camera, it looked crisper, sharper, more color saturated. Well, help yourself out emotionally by applying those presets to get it to what you're going to be kind of your base development before you ever have to start playing with it, and you'll feel better about your pictures right from the beginning.
Yes.
So what that means is if I just brought in a picture and it was flat, sometimes I go, that's not how I saw it when I took the picture. It's not what I had in my mind, and it's not what I saw on the back of my camera, and so you may chuck it because it's the flat raw. There's no processing to it. Whereas an import preset, you can apply a little clarity, auto-tone it, add a little more contrast, bump up the saturation a little bit, so when it immediately pops into the screen, it's got an extra chance of being more like what you thought of. And so that's the whole thing, going back to the whole idea of lens correction and stuff like that. Go ahead and plug that in so that it automatically lens corrects. You can always get rid of it afterwards, but use that kind of stuff. Do as much as you can that you're doing over and over again. If you find yourself every picture going, bumping up the contrast a little, adding this, adding that, do all those to one, save it as a preset, and then apply that on the import, and you're already a lot further along in your processing than you would be if you didn't apply a preset.
Yeah, we have a footnote for that one, Pete. We had, was it when Brian Hughes was on and told us about lens corrections?
Yeah.
As it happens, lens corrections is one tool that actually eats up your processor power.
Aha.
And so if you actually apply it towards the end of your, on this particular pictures, you may have a better overall experience with Lightroom lens corrections.
That's
and
great.
The spot removal tool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. See, now I can argue with some guys that, whenever you throw this stuff out, there's going to be certain folks that say, no, you need to do it because of the 23% transmutation that happens if you do it this way or that. And so people are like, how dare you don't lens correct all these things? That's great. Now I can come back and say, no, I'm only doing it when I want to.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think kind of a halfway point is I have a preset, that actually two. One just enables that profile correction, and one disables the profile correction. And so that way you can, if you find like when you're trying to do some spot removal or something like that and it's really running hard, you can just disable the profile correction, do your spot removal, and then just re-enable it again, and it's all set. So makes it easy to do.
Well, I'd also say we tend to be one-trick ponies, you know, and that I just keep applying that same preset. But if I would start to look at my shooting, there's certain presets that work really well for one type of photo that look like crap for another one.
Yeah.
So actually, if you can kind of learn, and this is where the virtual copies and snapshots come in handy, find out what works for what type of photo, then you can have multiple presets, import presets, according to what's going on, like landscape or portrait or whatever. And so then when you're importing, you can choose the one that's going to have the best results for that type of shot. You're not just applying the same settings to every photo that comes in, but you're saying, I did a portrait shoot, this is the preset I should apply on import to get me closer to what I want to do. We tend to just find one that works pretty good, and we stick with it for the rest of our lives. Whereas if you'll do a little research on how you shoot, you can really fine-tune your presets according to your whatever photo shoot you're using.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Pete. It looks like we're at the top of our hour here. So this is the part where Levi goes and crunches his lists and numbers and pulls out a random name and announces the winner.
That's right.
Do you need more time to do that?
I'm ready to do it.
All right.
No, I'm ready.
Go for it.
Our winner today is Mark Freeman.
Woo! Right. So, Mark, what you have to do is jump in the Q&A again and let us know that you're still here, because you have to be here to win it. And the saddest part of our Hangouts is when that person's not here, and we have to give it to somebody else. So,
hey, Helen, glad you jumped in.
That's right.
Just figured out how to use this.
All right, good. It's recorded, so you can rewatch for any part that you missed. As soon as it's done, it's going to be available. It's pretty nice that way. So, Mark is here. Great. Congratulations, Mark.
Awesome.
So how does he collect
Thanks,
this?
Mark.
File?
All you need to do, Mark just needs to send me an email at Levi@photofocus, Levi@photofocus.com, Levi@photofocus.com.
All right.
And I will send you a license key for Perfectly Clear.
Excellent.
And if you respond within the next 10 minutes, you get a free set of wind chimes.
And Pete will come over and wash your car. Hey, Pete, so where can we find you? Speaking of you, and I'm going to put these links in on the page here, too.
Easiest thing, go to petecollins.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's at petecphoto.com would be the easiest way to track me down there. Yep, those would be the biggest things right now.
Cool.
Excellent.
I'm putting that in as a comment on this page so people can just go there. On this forever archived with this Hangout is this page. And so, Levi, what do you got going on? Anything coming up? You going to Chicago?
Oh, let's see. We just finished WPPI, and so I'm headed out of Chicago next in June. Is when I'll be there. It's a fun conference, and I'm on photofocus.com all the time. I'm posting articles frequently, and I'm hanging out with Rob Sylvan every month, usually about the third or fourth week, usually on a Monday lately. And we'd love to have you. I'm also at PhotoLevi on Twitter and Instagram.
Cool.
Rob, where do we catch up with you?
I'd like to go to Chicago. Unfortunately, not going to be good. This is the 30th anniversary of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
And which is really sad.
Dankeschön.
I saw that movie in the theater in Chicago when it came out 30 years ago.
Oh, man. That's great.
So I really would like to get back there. It was like right around the end of May, early June when it came out, too. So I could make it there for that. But I won't.
Oh, that'd be great.
So I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here in New Hampshire with my puppy and my family.
Excellent.
We just got a 10-week-old rescue. So that's really changed our worlds there.
Did you have are the digital photo workshops taking off this year?
Levi. Randy is doing actually a photography one in Florida, and if you go to the digitalphotoworkshops.com, you can check that out. It's an architectural, which is what Randy does. That's his bread and butter, is architectural photography, and so you can go down to Florida. I think it's coming up.
He just had one last week.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Because I had a friend come down for that, and he gave me a holler, and we went out to grab something to eat, and he was going to go do that for the next 2 days.
Oh, nice.
So I think it was.
I know it was coming up real soon. So I think it was a success. So I think maybe he'll probably do that one again.
Oh, he does such a good job. Yeah.
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 So, but catch me on Photo Focus on our brand new Photo Focus website.
Right, head over there. It's
photofocus.com. There's a ton of Lightroom content on there, not just from Levi and myself, but there's a bunch of authors contributing stuff as well as all of our past Hangouts. So really good resource there. So I think that's it until next month. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And go definitely check out Perfectly Clear. Thanks for sponsoring us yet again. And thanks, Pete, for hanging out with us for this hour.
Hey, thanks for giving me a holler. Enjoy seeing you guys, and I'm still bitter about that iStock judgment, but that's gonna show up in my memoirs.
That was about 10 years ago or more, isn't it?
Rob Sylvan cheated me out of a victory. Cheated me. The man cannot be trusted.
Obviously, I don't hold a grudge. So
I'm carrying it for both of us. Don't worry.
All right, thanks, Pete. All right, guys, take good care. We'll see you around.
Thanks very much.
Bye, guys.